We're waiting for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to arrive at the White House for a meeting with President Trump as the two leaders both face investigations at home.
A little bit awkward because the prime minister is liable to be indicted back in Israel. And so there's that backdrop, which does make it a bit awkward. But surprisingly enough, there is a common ground not only between the U.S. and Israel, but between among the U.S., Israel, and most of the Arab countries there. And that common ground is the serious concern that everyone has about Iran.
Yaakov Katz is editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post, and he joins us now with more on this visit. Let's start with that first issue, Iran, and basically the stronghold that they've created in Syria. How do you think that conversation will go between these two leaders?
Well, I think that Netanyahu is here, Melissa, because essentially he wants to try to influence President Trump and the administration's decision-making when it comes to the future of the Iran deal, what President Trump will do come May when he'll have to, again, potentially waive sanctions, if he will waive those sanctions, or if he'll try to, as he negotiates with the Europeans, to try to modify the deal or even maybe pull out of the deal. Israel has basically three primary concerns today when it comes to Iran. One is ensuring that if the deal, however it stays, if it's modified, if it keeps as the way it is, that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. Number two is that somehow the issue of Iran's continued development of ballistic missiles is addressed. And three is the issue of Iran's continued support of terrorist organizations in the region, as well as the presence it's trying to create inside Syria. We saw just a few weeks ago what happened when they flew that Iranian drone across the border into Israel, and then the Israeli fighter jet that was shot down. So it's a very volatile situation, and right now the Iran deal doesn't address any of those issues, and that's a major concern for Israel.
It's a major concern for Israel. President Trump has signaled that it's obviously a huge concern for him as well. But he's not getting a lot of support from any other countries, specifically Europe. I mean, what could they do today to sort of tackle that problem?
Look, Europe, it seems to me to be more tactical in their thinking. They see quiet today, and why reopen up a can of worms, this nuclear deal that could then push the Iranians to pull out. There were some threats today in the press by top Iranian officials that if the deal is changed, they'll enrich uranium to military-grade levels, which would potentially give them the opportunity already to have a nuclear weapon. But, you know, so the Iranians are thinking short-term. I think that the president and Prime Minister Netanyahu are thinking long-term. What's going to happen when the sunset clause kicks in on this deal? What's going to happen 10 years from now? And we need to address those issues today.
So the president also made the big announcement about moving the embassy, and then after that, sort of nothing happened. And a lot of people thought that would be the beginning of a negotiation, that's sort of the opening salvo, taking that off the table so that then the two sides can talk about something else. And at the same time, you look at, you know, the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and his troubles at home. It seems like the police are closing in. So how do those two factors, how do you sort of talk about the moving of the embassy, and at the same time we've got this other story in the background about Benjamin Netanyahu's own problems?
There's no question that Netanyahu is facing a lot of legal troubles back at home. Today there's reports of a third state's witness, another one of his close associates, his so-called spin doctor, who's turning state's witness and is now going to also be testifying against the prime minister in the third investigation against him. So, you know, he's got those issues, but I think that there's also a country to run, and B, don't forget that this visit here right now, as much as it's important for Israeli-U.S. ties, it's also important for Netanyahu to broadcast back home how indispensable he is. He'll want to show the Israeli people that only he could get a president of the United States, in this case President Trump, to make such a move of moving the embassy and deciding to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He'll be inviting the president to attend the opening ceremony of the new embassy in Jerusalem in May. So he's going to be, you know, that's important for Israel, but it's also important for Netanyahu politically to show the Israeli electorate, hey, you need me to keep in my job.
I'm still doing this good work. You don't want to get rid of me. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yaakov Katz, thank you for joining us. Appreciate your insight.
Thank you.